Welcome everybody to another episode of the Mindset Nebula, where we talk about SAP, design, innovation, and often a variety of other related topics and opinions. I'm Rob Neuenschwander, Principal Architect with Mindset, and I have a couple of esteemed colleagues with me. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
I'm Paru. And I think I've been here on Nebula quite often.
You
So I
have,
head,
yes, your
yeah,
regular guest.
right. I head Mindset in India, and I'm responsible for building up the teams over here and making sure that we are delivering the best quality to the customers.
Awesome. And Srinath?
Yep. Hi. This is Trinath Piravali. I'm a senior solution architect at Mindset Consulting. Yeah, excited to talk more about today's topic, which is paperless maintenance.
Very good. Good segue, Chanath. So we are here going to talk about paperless warehouse today and our different experiences with customers and what we're seeing in the industry and some potential use cases and kind of some of the services and things that we're working on at Mindset as well. So why don't we jump right in to maybe talk a little bit about our customer experience. Trinath, you want to kick off like what you've seen in some of the work that you've been doing?
Sure. So probably I'll talk a little bit about the intro, right? What has been done after, and what was the state of a client when before they did this paperless maintenance. Okay. So we had an initiative called Factor the Future. It's like a large initiative, and they wanted to envision the future state of how their plants and warehouses operate. Uh, Traditionally, from the past, they've been operating along with all the prints, all the papers, I mean, in their workshops, right? Like, for example, if a technician has to come for a day work to actually work on any of the equipment, he has to come and wait for the supervisor, and then take a printout of their day's work, take his work orders, get inside the warehouse, and then start working on his operational procedures or on the different kind of equipments. Okay. So this somehow was a painful, where I would say there's a lot of dependencies on other people, for example, waiting on the supervisor or the receptionist, and then catching them on time to handle the print. So there's always some manual intervention. Uh, so the other hindsight of it is when there are larger plants and there are like just one or two technicians, if there is like an emergency repair or a work order which has been raised, sometimes it could be like, it has to be resolved in like 5 minutes. But they have to always look for this particular technician, call them on the phone, and then ask him to come down. So it's all like manual processes, and then always, right, yes, they have to take the prints, work orders as per the traditional process. Okay, so a quick user story. What we have done with this client is we developed an Android application which is built on the React Native, and then we have it integrated with SAP. Okay, so what happens is as soon as the technician comes in, he has his tablet. The application connects only in the Cargill, only in the client's network. Okay, and as soon as he loads, he sees a list of work orders, and then as soon as he click on this particular work order, he can navigate through different details. Right, he can edit the long text of the work order. He can edit attachments and all that, and he can also record the time. Like he once he starts to work on a particular work order, he'll say, hey, I'm starting right now, and then once he ends, he'll close that work order, and then the time taken will also be recorded, and it can be used for future data points where they can manipulate for a better performance of everybody's work. And then he can also create notifications where certain things has to be sent over back to SAP. uh, the other part of it is there is an when there is an emergency contact, it's a work order. It's always highlighted that, hey, this is an emergency work order, which automatically blinks on his tab, so that he can immediately put attention towards it and go and work there. uh, there are few bells and whistles, like we also ensure that, hey, this application is also can be tightly integrated with the materials. Like if there's a need of a material for a work order, right? You can quickly search the material. It is tightly coupled with the standard material application. You can search the material and see what's the availability of it, and then how soon can he get it. There are a lot of advantages, right, for this. Few things, right? There's a lot of time saving we see, and then the main topic is, we get rid of papers. He can directly get on the tab, log in, and that saves a lot of cost. And then, as I said, the one of the key advantages, emergency orders. And the core purpose is the future business moving towards sustainability, where we're trying to get rid of all the manual things, and then papers becoming paperless. So that is a little brief overview on the use case we update. The client is very excited, and there are a lot of future additions to the product, and then I'm sure it's going to scale big.
It's really interesting, as you described that. Obviously, the topic is paperless, and there's a lot of advantages to removing paper from the process. You touched on sustainability. There's certainly cycle time as well, and being able to do things more immediately. But you brought out a couple of connected value propositions that I think are really important to think about, because if you're implementing something paperless, by definition, you're likely using a digital interface, and you're capturing the information and the functions in a digital way. Then that opens up all these possibilities around analytics and workflow and real-time data access, because you've got that device and you've got systems in the back that interact with the data that you're capturing. So while you may start out with a paperless as a goal, you quickly start to realize a lot of other potential benefits around automation and workflow and process efficiency. So I think that's pretty interesting and important to point out.
Absolutely. The client is very excited to how far this will go, because you can do wonders out of this. You can hook it to the AI, and then you can do all that maths analytics. That will definitely give a lot of performance, a lot of cost savings, dollars, everything. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a couple of aspects of paperless is about integration as well, right? Because if you think in older times, somebody from the materials department had to take a printout that this was approved and so on, take it to the warehouse and then say, okay, this is approved. Now allow us to pick up the materials from here. And that person had to sign and then take it, right? And that went away quite a bit once the system was integrated between the different modules. That being said, there are still several systems that are outside of the module, and then that is again when either a paper has to be printed out and the approval process goes through the whole paper aspect. And I think also in heavily regulated industries, you will see a lot of paper usage still, because you have to have records of all these things stored. And if the governments were also to adopt much more of paperless, we could see a little more of sustainability aspects coming in, or efficiency aspect coming in. I remember when I was working for a pharma company at that point of time, we had to maintain like rooms of folders just to get that approval. Though the approval was all happening in the system, we had to still store it. So when FDA comes, we had things to prove that this is how it happened. I think two things that contributed to that was lack of trust, and the second aspect was the government was not yet ready, or a governmental organization was not yet ready. And I think we've come a long way from there, but nevertheless, there's still that whole integration between different systems that needs to be built up. There are the possibilities, for example, in the SAP world, to use BTP applications, which can marry two different worlds together for bringing approvals together and bringing the visibility of what has happened during the approval, the traceability. These are some of the aspects that contribute to people still keeping paper. So the better the systems adapt to that, then it would be easier for the customers to get rid of papers as well. So there is integration effort required.
Yeah, and even in that scenario, when you got compliance and signatures needed, then you could start to look at digital signatures and other ways to
Exactly.
kind of maintain the paperless notion of it.
Right.
And of course, we're using tablets and devices that have the capability to capture handwritten signatures, as well as printed signatures, and validate the authenticity of that. So there's a lot of ways to go about tackling those
Right.
different dynamics.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we've done a number of projects for different customers where we've automated a lot of the manufacturing or the warehouse management capabilities, and in leading into manufacturing too. But around, receiving products, moving products between locations, moving products to the manufacturing execution, moving products from manufacturing out to the, kind of the storage and ultimately the shipment back to the customers. So, and it's so fascinating because they're all different. Everybody's operations work a little bit differently, but at the core, you're really tackling a lot of the same things. So once you've encountered these problems and you've kind of learned how to solve them, you start to be able to use kind of your basic problem solving as building blocks and build out some of those capabilities. We actually have, we have software offerings and products as accelerators, that we bring to bear to offer to customers to really get them moving quickly. Real-time dashboarding on the warehouse floor of kind of the status of operations and where things are at. We've got our warehouse wise product, which offers automation of drivers coming in and out of the warehouse. So there's a lot there, and I know that we're continuing to invest a lot in this space just because it's such a common problem set, and everybody's racing to get to that automation. So I think it's it's a pretty exciting time in this space.
I think the
Definitely.
exciting part about the warehouse wise is also the visibility, right? Because sometimes that is also another aspect of paperwork. So bringing in a lot of visibility and metrics, getting that. One of the biggest advantages of going paperless is also getting real-time insights into exactly what is happening. So the impact of that should not be underrated. So in the warehouse wise, we do look into outbound logistics processes as well as kitting replenishments, and that really helps to bring a kind overview of the performance of the employee as well. So from that perspective, bring real actionable data to the person who has to take the decision and help that person to run with the decision. And if you had part of the processes on paper, that would also be difficult because you have a break in the information and you don't have the complete visibility over what happens. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's a pity that we still discuss this in 2022, but I'm sure that we are far much further ahead than we were in early 2000s. So especially with the kind of mobile devices we have right now, I think including telephone, right, and including our iPhone. So you don't need to actually have managers sitting somewhere else, wait to come back to office to approve things. You can really think of the approval process for flowing through all the mobile devices that are with the managers, traveling with them anywhere they go. And now,
Yeah, that's really good.
post-COVID, we are all always traveling. So,
It's a good point because a lot of times you think about these processes and you're automating them as paperless. You think about rugged devices that you're using in the warehouse, on the shop floor, et cetera, and those kind of rugged RF devices. But there's a lot of other personas at play, right? There isn't just the people that are actually working in the warehouse, receiving inventory, moving inventory, et cetera. But there's also all the kind of the admin and other structures around it that can participate now in keeping those processes moving efficiently. And like you said, it's super easy to kind of start to present the UX for those on the consumer devices that they're already using and very familiar with. So a lot of opportunity there, and SAP's delivering a lot of new capability in this space all the time. But certainly even for customers who aren't on the newest releases, there's a lot that we can do to automate those functions.
yeah. I think that is exactly where customers need to think beyond the standard functionality, to think in terms of I mean, Internet of Things is a huge thing. I always believed in that right from the beginning, right? Connecting devices to software is actually bridging that gap. And that has already improved the service side, service management processes for the customers quite a lot. It can also extend to the logistics side to bring in all the inventory at the right point of time once you connect let's take for example the vending machines. Once you connect the vending machines to the systems and then subsequently, which is already done, and subsequently connect those inventory that is there in the vending machine to the warehouse system, predict what is going to happen to the inventory that is there, what goes faster, especially in the retail side, what goes faster, which are the products that go faster, and give the information at the right time to the right warehouse, and then get the products just in time to the consumer before the whole shelf runs out of the product. I think that kind of innovations are what we are seeing in the retail space. Now the question is how to bring that to the rest of the world. So
Yeah.
connecting devices to the software will really help to go paperless and also to make things go faster.
Yeah, you're really starting to pull out a lot of capabilities that you see SAP touting in their BTP platform, right? And you're almost like directly out of their marketing handbook. It's you got IoT capabilities in there. You've got AI for the predictive types of use case scenarios. The streaming data through the integration platforms, and the ability to kind of make decisions, and then connect it all back to the kind of your enterprise backend, where you've got your materials and inventories and your orders and everything kind of stored. So that's that's the promise, right? That's where they want to see it. Certainly, there's other ways you can put that all together, and we've seen a lot of our customers using hyperscaler capabilities for several of those components. But SAP's done a lot to try and make that all within the same product offering set with BTP, bumped up against their whole integrated enterprise, intelligent enterprise platform.
Yeah. Rob, I think the listeners of Nebula would be disappointed if I didn't do that, right? Bringing a
Mhm.
SAP. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we spend our life, bumping very closely up against that. And of course, Paru, you've got years of experience and a rich network of people still in the SAP
Yeah.
ecosystem. But that's how we solve problems, right? We look at the tools
Right.
that we have available and what we can do to bring value. And
Yeah.
that's there's a lot of value to be brought in that
Yeah.
space, whether it's on the BTP platform or else. But those are exactly the types of capabilities that enable
Mhm.
paperless, right? Because when you can start to leverage those, you don't have the need for printing out
Mhm.
lists and orders and checking things off. You can do a lot of things
Right.
digitally,
Right.
that you didn't have before. And when you do need input, you can use the capabilities of a device to scan a barcode or a UPC, or to take a picture of something. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways to bring quick value that way.
Yeah, I think, sorry, one last statement. So just before, one of the things is what is interesting to see is the devices have the capability now to just go beyond reading that scan code or whatever. They are able to look with light and voice and so on onto what is available in the shelf and guide the people who are picking to the right. Maybe space from where they need to pick it up. So there are many things in the technology side, in the real hardware side, that can help to fill in the information on the software side. Think of light, think of the vision just from the eyes perspective, think of
Like augmented
voice.
reality kind of thing.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So bringing all that in, it has just started, and it's very exciting to see what is the big steps made in all those directions, especially in the context of warehouse, because that is where the activities need to speed up, tasks need to speed up, because finding in different products inside a warehouse is also a challenge. And now I'm thinking in terms of the S/4HANA message of you get orders, single orders with single items. Now imagine thousands of orders with just looking for a t-shirt of that size, or let us say a water bottle of a certain size. One could be a water bottle of 0.5 liters, another one could be a water bottle of 1 liter. Now going and finding that at the speed, collecting all that kind of orders which look for 0.5 liters, and then going and picking up that, all that activity gets now speeded up because it's all in the system and the warehouse person is just redirected. Now he goes to the shelves, or he goes to the bins and looks for that particular product, and he knows exactly which bin to look at, and his picking equipment just goes over there and allows him to pick up over there. So that is what is happening now in warehouses. So that is interesting to see, and I hope many more warehouses get automated that way. So
Yeah.
Yeah, right, Paru. I mean, I was trying to think my mind with comparing with one of the retail chains like Amazon, right? And then, you know, the kind of tools which they're using, it should be very, very fast right now. And then somehow I believe the world, I mean, is going at a very high pace in getting rid of papers. Okay, and then everybody, like with the latest offerings, as Rob said from SAP with the AI and all that, uh, is going. The pace is very high with the paperless maintenance. Uh, Again, I'm trying to think back in my old days. I mean, I've written a program for RF, reading the RF, right? RF readers. It's always like complicated programs, and then now we have very apps you can just install, and then one of the app we use the standard one. All you
mhm,
need is just a tablet or like a phone, right? And then they just, as you said, go scan it. It exactly tells you where the bin, where the item is, in which bin, which place, which plant. And then, as you told, all the tracking and things that will make a lot easier. For like a simple app, the value in return and the ROI is tremendous.
mhm,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting. We just went through a workshop with a customer who's interested in building some automated paperless capabilities for their warehouse operations. And they're not on S4, they're in the ECC6 shop. And so, one of the things we were trying to evaluate was what out of the box capabilities could we bring. So we looked at the Fiori app catalog, and there really wasn't a lot there. But what was fascinating was for the S4 platforms, there's so much available, that there's, so for those customers who are already on S4 or who will be shortly moving to S4, it certainly would behoove them to kind of look at the ways that those interfaces, the Fiori apps, can transform their existing processes, right? Because without having those capabilities previously, people were either forced to customize or to build a lot of manual processes, and most places did the latter. They built a lot of manual processes, which involved paper. That being said, there certainly are ways, to build automation, but it's going to require some custom development and careful consideration of how long your investment will last for ECC environments. But for those that are in S4, there's just so much opportunity that people can get without even doing a lot of custom development. It's pretty intriguing.
I think even in S4, there is so much of integration that has happened as well, right? With EWM coming directly into S4. So there is a lot of cost saving from that perspective also, that customers could think in terms of, because everything is kind of within the same system. So from that perspective, all information is bundled together, all information is flowing without extra effort from the customer side. So there are things that people should take a look at S4 in comparison to ECC plus and EWM, side by side, where before you think really in terms of how can I make processes flow? How can I get rid of paper in certain parts of the process? And then the whole aspect of extra things to be built up from a custom part is really the tying up of the devices, because devices, each customer uses very different type of devices which have got very different software associated with it. How do I bring that information? So that's the only part left for the customer to take care of now, with bringing the information from outside of SAP systems back into SAP. So,
Yeah. And then, there's other accessories and devices too, like the printers that
correct.
can be mobile and again, enabling another piece of, kind of your paperless operation and mobile operation.
Correct.
So, there's a lot of considerations for how you
Hmm.
equip your shop, as you said. Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
I think one area to tie that up to is the inventory management, right? So even that is completely via mobile apps now completely tied up as well. And so from that perspective, even from the sales order side, you can completely understand what the inventory is, and you don't need to. In the past, you probably had to check what exactly the inventory was at the paper on the stock room that comes through, and now you don't need to do that. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it certainly is an exciting time. Like I mentioned earlier, I anticipate, we've done a lot of analysis and work already within our innovation labs and the work that we're doing to build accelerators and software and tools. I only see that, continuing to explode. Certainly, manufacturing clients and those that are handling inventory and have warehouses that they operate are a big piece of our customer base. And so I know that we are paying a lot of attention and time and effort to build quality tools that will automate. And whenever we work with a customer, we're always thinking too about how can we kind of take what we're learning and build good platforms and strong capabilities that we can bring to other customers. I think that I just see that continuing to accelerate. I think this will continue to be a strong piece of our portfolio just because of the nature of the customers we're working with have such high
Mhm.
demand on it.
Right. Hmm. Yeah.
Srinath, are you seeing any new capabilities in kind of your area that you could foresee potentially in the future that we might develop something?
Yeah, as I told, there are a few use cases which we're planning, Rob. And then the bigger initiative is as well, again, the factor of future. So they want to envision a larger scope in terms of their global plans. So, few things like, where the application can automatically read, scan, and all that capabilities we definitely want to integrate. Right now, it's just mobile and then kind of using for the work orders. But we wanted it to be like, having a larger scope where we're able to read everything. And then there are some workflows which are set as Paru has also said, no, when the inventory is getting out, you got to send a message. I mean, there are some workflows which gets triggered automatically, like a
Mhm.
back jobs, and then making sure, hey, there's an order. Again, the order is again sent for approval on mobile. And then obviously the inventory automatically gets filled and things like that. So I'm seeing a lot of scope in this particular area. We have a roadmap like for about there are like 3 or 4 MVPs planned for the next 1 or 2 years. So there's large improvements which are being planned in this particular area.
Yeah, cool. Are you hearing anything yet about artificial intelligence and machine learning being applied into any of
Yeah.
those
So
projects?
we not AI yet, but we are trying to do the machine learning techniques where, as I told, the data analytics is already collected. Since we all that have reports and then it is being sent to the central CDP, which is called the data platform. And then from there, we are applying some machine learning techniques to see how we can better improve the performance.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, I'm super excited to hear how some of those things evolve. Again, it's the things that we learn there will likely be very applicable to any number of different kind of customer scenarios that we encounter.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's a very, very exciting work, Rob. I mean, for sure, right? You're like saving a lot of man hours, and then you're dealing with a lot of the latest modern techniques to get rid of the traditional ones. And then even for the developers, I know it's very exciting for the developers. It's very exciting for the business as well because
yeah, the huge
it's
ROI.
improvements.
Yeah, there's enormous ROI when you can start to get those tasks right. There's a lot of manual effort and labor that's involved in managing warehouses, and the more that you can start to build efficiencies and automation, it adds up quickly, certainly.
I think one aspect or return on investment that you can think about that this contributes to is really customer satisfaction. Because the moment you have the inventory, it goes faster, first of all, when you have the paperless. You are able to exactly identify. I've already talked about all these. But imagine the billing cycle, right? We think always in terms of the warehouse, but getting the billing correct with regard to what has actually gone out of the warehouse and then billing at the exact time when after the customer is notified about what has gone out of the warehouse and getting everything ready in time helps the customer with the billing cycle, but also helps your finance team as well, because you will get your as soon as the customer receives the a product, you will get your money in because they have got advance notice regarding this has already gone out. This is your billing. They can be prepared in time. So from that perspective, there's the whole aspect of customer being prepared, which helps the customer feel better, and we also as the vendor who's selling also is able to kind of get recuperate the money faster, so your accounts receivables is much in a much better situation than otherwise. So I think the billing cycle, it's an end-to-end advantage that you would have instead of waiting to print out and waiting for information to reach the billing teams and so on.
Yeah, that's really good. I would be remiss, because of our mission in life is to improve the experience of everybody working with SAP in profound ways. Be remiss if I didn't mention that, there's a really underrated aspect of this too, which is around the employee experience. And so, if you think about the staff working within the warehouse and giving them the tools to make real-time decisions and to more effectively, kind of carry out their job. You talked about, potentially, AR to visualize where things are on a shelf. And if you can start to chip away at the things that are frustrating and time consuming and otherwise, kind of a drag on the employee's experience in the warehouse, you can improve, their experience. Ultimately, if you make it a better employee experience, you can think about more retention, right? And you
Hmm.
have less turnover in the warehouse. And these are typically jobs that turn over on a fairly high basis, in terms of the overall operation. And if you can reduce that, then you start to reduce the costs of recruiting new employees, training new employees, the efficiencies in which they work. So there's a lot of trickle down benefits, and which become real dollars, right? There's real ROI for an operation if they're able to, really improve that employee experience to the extent that it helps them attract and retain employees in their operation beyond where they're at today. So I think that's just, it doesn't get a lot of probably industry press or notice that I've seen, but certainly in the amount of time and effort that we spend thinking about the employee experience, it's something that we've looked at and certainly, brought as a consideration to our customers, but certainly one that I think people should consider strongly.
Hmm. Yeah. I think interestingly, while I was kind of looking into some statistics for this podcast, I also saw that there was about 14% adoption of voice-enabled devices already in 2012 in
Wow.
warehouses. Yeah, this was by the Aberdeen Group, and I didn't find what the latest number is, but I hope that it's above 50% or so right now, right? So even just kind of looking into what are the voice enabled scenarios that we can So, from a design thinking perspective, Rob, since you touched on the experience part, let me touch on the design thinking aspect.
Sure.
Uh, I think one of the areas with our point of view that we build up for the warehouse management would be to really look into what are the different technologies that are available for going paperless in the warehouse. So one is voice, one is light, as I already mentioned now, and what are the devices that the customers need to put together. So handheld devices for RFID scanning, even having the barcodes printed out the right way with as much information as possible in it. So putting together that list before you start with the design thinking a workshop, and then leading the users through that whole aspect of what makes your life challenging today because you're using either paper or Excel. I mean, nowadays Excel is the new paper, right?
Mhm.
Because you have uh, that paper was there in the past. Now there are many companies have moved to Excel to track all that was in the paper, and now subsequently move everything to where you are executing transactions, which is your warehouse management system. So through that whole cycle of where exactly is your pain in using Excel or paper. Now what can we do to eliminate that? Is there a device that can help you to capture that information into the device or into a barcode, and then subsequently send it into the transaction? How can we do that? So walking through in the design thinking workshops of identifying those pain points and subsequently mapping it to these kind of device solutions and doing the integration, I think that is exactly how we could help our customers to really reach a level of that efficiency that we were talking about all this time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And of course, tying it back to full circle, um, yeah, SAP has conversational AI as one of the capabilities in the BTP platform. And so,
Right.
they have the technology and the APIs to the technology, closely aligned on the same platform as where you're building the apps. And so those use cases are actually very achievable for
Right.
bringing together in rather quick order.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any other comments, Trinath? One thing I think that's worth mentioning. We talked about this, being, opportunities for paperless in our warehouse. There's a lot of other functions, obviously, from a business standpoint that could, benefit from paperless capabilities. Maybe you guys could mention a few of the, kind of just tease the readers or the listeners a little bit with, some other content and ways of thinking about this topic.
Yeah, so that is a very good point. So apart from warehouses, as you told, right, Rob, we have several accelerators, and we are a pioneer in getting the design thinking space and getting rid of the pain points. As Paul mentioned, there'll be a lot of pain points in the list if you bring down all the warehouse employees and ask them to list down. So one of the other example, right? One of the other use case we did is kind of automating the invoice reconciliation process just using an application, a mobile app. Okay, where like there are two different systems, like an external system for vendor and then the SAP system that is vendor invoice management. We have to reconcile the invoices, and we had an application that's always a use case, which is all on our website, on our mindset website, and then it saved a lot of manual hours. There are almost like 10,000 invoices piling up for manual work to get them approved, and then they came, and then it was like a tremendous success that they got rid of all those invoices within no time. So, and then another example could be the safe transport, right? Where the driver doesn't need to sign a paper. All he does is goes, checks in the app, and then gets in, loads the truck, and gets out. It's all like, employee experience, saving of time, getting rid of paper printers and all that. So there are several use cases, as I told, on our accelerators and on our website. Yeah, I mean, for sure, it'll be a lot of exciting work coming forward in this area.
Mhm. Yeah, good.
I think one aspect is the contract management side. You still see a lot of contracts being executed on paper, which doesn't capture the real-time updates that are made to the contracts. So I can envisage a scenario where you have contract management all captured into Ariba or and the SAP contract systems, and then subsequently any updates that are made flows all the way through to the final warehouse center where you can actually plan for your monthly consumption based on what is the contract volumes that you're talking about. So from that perspective, even tying up any areas where paper is used would be useful, I think, to speed up the whole chain of the logistics as well. Another area would be for me the whole financials. This is not even related to the warehouses, but generally finance is another area where you have a lot of bookkeeping still not on paper but on Excel, right? As I said, Excel is the new paper for me. So
Hmm.
from that perspective, even thinking about and not even downloading, because what happens when you have either paper or Excel and so on is the version management of the whole thing. And then what are you communicating? What different versions are you communicating to each of your recipients? So these, in order to get the latest information, it is important to capture everything into the system. So
Yeah, very good. And of course, HR is has a lot of manual processes traditionally and paper-based processes, and that's always a rich area for exploration. You can kind of go down the line of all the integrated processes on the back end and find good use cases.
yeah, everything legal too.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I was in UCB Pharma, and actually the contract idea came to me from that. But we had a lot of paper related legal documents and so on. So I was the heading the HRIT and the legal IT, and legal IT was one of the areas where we converted a lot of processes into digitalized a lot of processes. And I still, when I see what we did at that time, and I still see some companies which still continue to do a lot of paper-based legal processes. I think there's still a lot of improvement that needs to be done in the industry. Maybe it's underestimated function from the perspective of improvements that can be made from a IT perspective. And this is somewhere I think there's a lot of scope for customers to really look at. Don't just leave the lawyers to sort out your compliance issue, help them to
Mhm.
work faster as well and better, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Srinath, any last thoughts?
No, as I told Rob, this is a very exciting lot of scope which is there out in terms of change going from paper to paperless. Yeah, very excited to get in. There are a lot of use cases customers are asking for, as I told, and there's a lot of work in the pipeline for us. Definitely, there could be a lot of accelerators we can build in this area. There are like several use cases with the customers are asking on. Yeah.
Yeah. So very good. To that end, obviously, we've got resources on our website that people can review. Certainly, you could reach out to any of the three of us and ask some questions and pop into kind of one of our online workshops or connect with us in any of the venues that we're showing up at. But yeah, I think there's certainly a lot to come in this space. We'll continue to grow and build new capabilities, and excited about how this whole industry is shaping out. So with that, I think we can wrap for today. Look forward to connecting with you in kind of upcoming events, and watch for the next episode of our Nebula podcast to come out soon.
yeah,
Bye,
wishing
everybody.
everybody a great fun time.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.